Okay, so if you want something to do that's like entertaining and rock and roll related and fun and that you maybe never have done before, go see Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots at La Jolla Playhouse. It's directed by Des McAnuff. Des is the guy that brought you Tommy and the Jersey Boys and so many other things over the years. And he's back at La Jolla Playhouse, which is kind of like, in my opinion, his home away from home. And he's working with Wayne Coyne of the Flaming Lips to put this thing on. Is it cool? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to step inside La Jolla Playhouse and meet director Des McAnuff and talk with him about Yoshimi right now. Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots is kind of one of those once-in-a-lifetime fall-in-your-lap kind of things, and you're going to put it to life. You're going to bring this thing to life.
Right.
And so far, the initial word I've heard about it is that everybody really is like crazy about it.
It seems that way.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
From your lips to God's ears, as the saying goes.
So first of all, tell people how the Flaming Lips album, that's been rated by Rolling Stone magazine as one of the top 20 albums in the last 20 years, ends up going to stage.
You know, they were approached by a number of people, you know, who suggested this would make a great theatrical production of some kind. And there were a couple of actors and others, you know, through the agency, and we happened to share an agent whose name is Susan Weaving, and they talked to Susan about getting it to me. Now, I'm sure she recommended that I would be, you know, a good person for this, so it's not like they've been, you know, that they were necessarily aware of anything that I've been doing, but I think they liked the sound of, you know, the fact that I'd worked with the Kinks and the Who and other, you know, Randy Newman, others. So I guess they felt I had enough credentials that, you know, they would approach me. So they asked me to basically see what I thought of the idea.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Credentials. I think the credentials, Pete Townsend's credential is pretty outstanding, and Randy Newman and the guys you mentioned.
I've been very, very lucky. I really have, and a lot of them, of course, have worked right here in this very theater. At any rate, I listened. I knew some of the cuts off the album, but I sat down and listened to the whole album, and I put it on in the car and played it, which I tend to do with shows. I did the same thing with Tommy. You know, I played it over and over and over. My daughter and I were spent a certain amount of time during that period. It was sort of in 2005, driving back and forth to Los Angeles, and so she heard it a lot too. And there were a couple of things that were implied on the album that I thought would make a good storyline. One was Fight Test, which kind of sets up a love triangle that seemed promising, and then the kind of idea of a robot falling in love with a freedom fighter that had some appeal. But I couldn't really find a strong foundation for the story for a while. And then I heard that very sadly during the recording of this album that they had lost a friend in Japan in hospital. And in a sense, this is all about her. And while it had nothing to do with any story on the album, I think it must have affected the album thematically, and it certainly inspired It's Summertime, which I believe was written for her parents, although in all honesty, Wayne and I have never had an in-depth discussion about this. When I heard about this young woman losing her life, it just took over my imagination, and it provided me with the foundation for the story that I felt we needed. And so I sat down with Ron Melrose, who's our music director, and with an intern whose name is Sam, was Sam, and for the three of us had a kind of virtual workshop, and I storyboarded an old big ghetto blaster playing all the music, played music from War with the Mystics, and which had been recorded by that time, and The Soft Bullet, and just had all these songs to choose from. And I had a kind of a rough scenario, developed it a little bit more, and then this took unmitigated gall. But I actually went into the studio with my friend John Kilgore in New York and remixed their songs to to create a kind of libretto and score and a presentation, flew to Oklahoma City and said, okay, what do you think? And that started our collaboration.
That's great.
Yeah, so
That's great. And what did they say? What was their reaction initially? Were you? I mean, I can only imagine you walk into a meeting and you're looking at them and you're playing this. And the nice thing about this isn't something you haven't done before,
right?
But you're still taking somebody else's piece of work. And
yes, absolutely.
And you're an artist. Anytime somebody tinkers with your art, there's two reactions,
right?
And one of them isn't good.
That's absolutely right.
And how did that feel?
You know, I think the thing that reached Wayne Coyne is that I was emotionally very involved in the piece, and I think that's extremely important to Wayne because he's a very, emotional writer and certainly a wonderful composer and I think a poet. And so the way I did this is I'd written a script, to accompany the music. And I want to be very clear here. They are the principal creators behind this. It's their words and their music. So what I did is, managed to, cobble together a story from all of this. But it's so I wasn't, I hadn't made kind of grotesque changes in the composition or anything. It was very much their work. And I read it. I had a way of presenting this material. And in fact, they liked it so much we ended up doing it for Warner Brothers at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And they all stayed. We had 17 of the top people at Warner's Music there. And I think when you read something like that, I was describing the story and the stage production, I'm very emotionally involved in the piece, and I think that really reached Wayne. I think that really touched him. I think he realized that I adore their music and that I'm very passionate about their music, and I think that helped inspire him to trust me a little bit.
Okay, and then there's the daughter test.
Yeah.
And how did that go over?
It's funny. I actually had a couple of these.
I have 3 daughters. I just met her. So if your kids don't like it, you're out. I mean,
right.
It can go that way.
Well, I think like you said, I think you hit a certain age where you want to remain hip in the eyes of your children. And they actually keep us young.
Yes, they do.
And keep us well informed. And she's, my daughter's a veritable musicologist. She knows far more about the history of rock and roll than I'll ever know. And she has great authority on this subject. She's a very good musician and singer and songwriter. And so she watched me kind of start to put this together. But at one of these little kind of salon presentations that I was doing with a good sound system and reading the script, I invited her to attend with a friend of hers who also loves music. And they were very, very supportive. And the great thing now is at Old White Playhouse, we're seeing a really young audience.
Yeah.
And I dare say some of them will have been to Lips concerts, but never been to a play. And so this is a fantastic thing. And I think theater goers are responding, obviously, traditional theater goers are responding very well and seem to be eating it up. But it's so exciting to get a new audience into the theater.
And it's important because there's nothing like people doing something live without a net. It's not like a movie where if you don't like the way the scene felt, you can take it again as an actor, or if you flub a line.
Right.
You're flying it live, you're doing it in front of people, and you have technical requirements to make a robot be believable in presence of an audience.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you talk about this, because what's unusual about this piece is that, it's not like we've invented anything. We're using projections and LED and puppetry and, robotics, and, we're doing everything to time code SMPTE, and this is all stuff that in one way or another has been done before, but it's we're, I think, combining these things in a truly unique way, and it's a very unusual story. And so that creates a very seductive concoction. But what's really, I think, very unusual about it is that, in a sense, it is a live performance and a movie simultaneously, because we have to work out so much in advance in terms of the technology that it's like riding a runaway train. And there was a great performance relatively early on, maybe 4 or 5 performances in, where you suddenly felt like the actors were leading everything else, and that was like a big breakthrough for the company. You know, that they were taking over and they were in charge, which is of course necessary. But you're right, we practice our art in the eternal present, to quote Bob Dylan, and it does make, I think, the performances much more exciting. You know, well, they have a whole other dimension.
I'm excited. I know a lot of people are excited, and it's great to see you again. And thanks for giving us a little time. By the way, I can't say what I saw as I opened the door backstage, but you don't want to miss it.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
All the best. Thanks.